Whatever way one puts it, religion will remain just a simple tool for mental imprisonment, or let's say for compartmenting of people, and, well, isolation. What I mean through this is just like with any other concept. A concept is created in order to support something, basically a meaning. Now, a meaning is just like taking life force and you're putting a physical structure around it and you're giving it a functional body, right? Because ultimately, a word is a body. It is a function, like in programming. It has a body that it executes and then it simply perishes. It is exactly just like life. It gets a physical nature, it exists for a while, and then the physical nature, well, reaches a moment when it is no longer compatible with the life force within. So it is freed. When it comes to religion, it is the same thing. It is a concept that has been created in order to support some ideas. But unfortunately, just like any other meaning, it is nothing else than an ultimate piece of, conceptual separation. Why? Well, this can actually be used by some in order to rule people and, to keep them divided, but ultimately it is the true nature of meaning. When you create meaning, you create it, hopefully, for the betterment of others. For example, languages. Languages are very complex and in some cases rigid structures in which, rules and certain ideas are, meant so that people can communicate one with the other. As they do, now communication becomes conceptually, so therefore mentally, much faster, right? But communication, even nowadays with so many languages and so much technology that allows you to communicate easily with people, communication is still, in many cases, well, in all situations, it is still a great percentage of it is nonverbal, right? Because communication doesn't just occur through just what you say. That only occurs for unconscious people, those who just allow circumstances to guide their life. But when it comes to people who have better perception, right, who have better capabilities of understanding depths, right, of emotion, depths of the mind, right, when it comes to such people, communication is always going to be nonverbal, right? They can speak and say certain things, but they will always be capable of picking up on other people's emotions, right? Their mental states and the such. Therefore, you know, it is far more important, to be more in tune with others. And the point is, if you live unconsciously, you're already living in separation because you're not connecting emotionally to yourself, or better said, to who you are, and therefore you're also gonna run away from the depths of emotion, which means that you'll always live as a shallow being, which will mean that you will always run away when it comes to, relationships becoming somewhat deeper, right? Because there is this fear. Once you separate, you lose yourself, or it's like something that is very dear to you, aka your comfort zone, is suddenly lost because you have to share your whole existence with other people. But it doesn't necessarily have to be that way. So nowadays, you see, the point is communication is mostly nonverbal, right? People look one another in the eyes. They usually look the body posture. You can even feel many of the things, right? You can feel certain frustrations. You can feel a lot of things if you're not an ignorant, right? That is why, for example, face masks in this day are kind of, crime because, well, they are inhibiting people from expressing whatever they feel, whatever they do, because the mask doesn't serve in any way, shape, or form against microorganisms. But the point is, moving even further, it's not just about that. It's just that it also covers the face, which is a main aspect of communication. So the point about any meaning, irrespective of what it conceals within it, right? Because meaning can also conceal things, right? That's why you always have things with multiple meanings, and you also have the occult meanings. For example, English is an occult language, or can be called somewhat like that because it has some truths hidden within. Not sure if they were truly meant so or they just happen to be coincidences, but well, they kind of exist, right? When you have television, it's called television for a reason, right? It's called television because it tells a vision to you, right? Or it tells your vision, it tells lies to you visually, right? It tells lies to your vision. Tell lie vision or tell a vision, right? Now you also have, programming, right? You're teaching people how to be like machines, right? Subservient species that, well, the only thing they know and do is, well, serve you, right? Or the ones who rule. When it comes to a religion, right? The point of a religion is that there are, well, two main types, right? They are the monotheist and they are the polytheist ones. The so-called more modern ones, and also the ones who kind of seem to have abolished paganism, are the ones in which, you always believe in one single god, right? And nowadays we can take into account, let's say, Jewish people believing in Jehovah, we have the Muslims believing in Allah, and of course we have the Christians believing in God. Now usually I'm gonna pick on Christianity because it's, the religion that I know best. And the point is, there are apparently, or ultimately, there are so many similarities in between the three, enumerated religions, right? Because each of the three worships a male god, right? If we have three religions in which one worships a male god, one worships a goddess, and one worships a tree, let's say, well, there will be obvious differences, right? But in this case, the religions each have this one point, right? Now, religion is just a belief, okay? Irrespective of how many people may feel emotionally flagellated, religion is still a belief. You don't come with such a belief in this world, you just accumulate it from others. Be it that you're forced to accept it, or you're simply, surrounded by people who abandon ideas about that, right? But ultimately, the big question is, are you sure that there is actually that which you are implying, right? There is, of course, something which created this universe, but ultimately, are you sure it is a bigger man? Because, well, Christianity, for example, says that there's a white-bearded fuck that stays out there up in the skies, and well, they don't have anything else to do other than watch, Earth TV and see what each and every one of you are doing, so that, well, they're preparing the list for your, eternal judgment, right? Or whatever people call it. Because religions ultimately have this effect of ruling people, right? You always want to rule people through religion, so one can say that they have actually been, ways of governing, right? But when you say governmental aspect, right? When you say governmental, right, doesn't it sound like governing the mind? Which is kind of what Christianity has been doing, right? It has been governing the minds of people because, well, ultimately you were forced to believe in something, and, well, if you didn't, there were consequences. Now, when it comes to Christianity, it is just like any other religion, a belief, right? It is something that you accept. You may take it for granted, or you may take it as the real truth. Whatever it is, well, use it as it may fit. However, it is just nothing else than a belief, right? And when it comes to beliefs, well, there is only a single choice, right? Let's take, for example, one of the most common beliefs that, well, people kind of think in nowadays, right? You suck. This is a belief that many people are trapped into because, well, we live in a sick society where the truth scares people, and, well, honestly, people are always taught low self-esteem from the beginning, right? People who are very simple-minded will always, well, end up doing what others are doing instead of seeking to make their lives better, and especially that of the ones who come after, right? Because people who suffer because of dumb parents will also do the same thing because now when they are parents they believe that they are finally entitled to do that which their parents did to them, except they will do it much worse, right? So when you have people that, well, actually so many people living in low self-esteem and considering that they suck, well, there is one single choice. You can take this expression as a positive remark, or you can take it as a negative remark. How can this be taken as a positive remark? Well, let's actually take it a bit deeper, right? Let's see how it could work. Well, if you truly suck, right, it means that nothing in your life is working, right? So if nothing in your life is working, then you simply have no problem when it comes to replacing things, right? Nothing in your life is working, so you don't need any more of those attachments, right? If nothing in your life works, well, that's the easiest and best thing, because everything needs replacement, right? When you're working, for example, at 90%, let's say, and you want to jump to the 100%, well, you're gonna have a much harder time pinpointing those things which hinder you the most, right? It's like trying to, you know, kill the fleas. Well, you're gonna have some work, right? You can't kill them all, but at least you're gonna weed some of them out, right? In order to make yourself better. Because when you're working at 80-90%, right, when your life is that good, well, there are a lot of things that are working in your life, right? And not all of them are, working the best way, but, there will always be those attachments, right? Because you're also knowledgeable of the moments when things weren't working. So now when things go well, it's much easier to stay somewhat attached to those, even if they may still hinder you to a certain extent, right? So one may actually choose to embrace the suck, right? And say, okay, I suck. So ultimately, it means that there's not much lower that I can get. Obviously, there's always something lower, right? A lower level of suckiness that you can actually end up in life. But the point is, usually, if everything sucks in your life, there's not much worse that your life can go, right? So the point is, well, that's the easiest part, right? Everything has to be changed. Because, well, if you want to enjoy that suckiness as your comfort zone, well, you will do just like most other people are doing. Or you can embrace that idea, right? Instead of embracing it as a propeller, right? Something to propel you towards greater heights, right? And towards change, you can actually embrace it as a prison and actually suffer from it, like most people are doing. You can actually embrace it as a front towards you and become a fanatic who, hates everyone and most likely will end up as, I don't know, some kind of, murderer or I don't know, serial killer or whatever, or you can simply internalize it and suffer endlessly within. Both of these last situations, well, they are the same thing. You oppose change and you simply embrace misery as your comfort zone. Well, this will always come with suffering, because if you choose unconsciousness, suffering will always be your guide. Now, suffering doesn't exist to you as a punishment, just as religions say. It only exists as a propeller, as something to push you forwards, right? To push you out of ignorance, just like education should, but, well, unfortunately it's not doing it, right? Because education stems from the Latin educario, which means to pull out of ignorance. But, well, with stupid learning systems, well, you're only gonna keep people ignorant because ultimately, well, you need subservient species to serve your plans, right? So religion is just like that. You can use it only as a tool, right? Because it is technically a tool. You can use it to hinder yourself, or you can use it to improve yourself. What each and every religion says, it doesn't matter of its name or what it believes in, it says that there is definitely something out there, right? Even if religions usually still have an animalic way of presenting things, right? Now, what do I mean by animalic? Well, let's actually take it into account a bit deeply, right? They say that, there are 4 levels of awareness, right? We have the drone level, in which, the units are all interconnected and they kind of exist at a certain, hive mind core, right? Hive mind mentality, and the individuals have no awareness of their own. All they know is serve the hive mind, and that's it. Beyond this, if one supersedes this, right, they end up in what is called the artist level, right? The artist finally becomes more aware of things beyond them, right? They still remain a slave of their mind, mainly, but they start having, that identity crisis, right? They're no longer stuck in that, subservient state, right? They're no longer the hive mind, right? They're no longer part of the hive mind, right? They are severed slightly, and they have what's called an existential crisis, right? It's that moment when those questions pop up. Who am I? Why am I here? Right? What's my life purpose? Okay? If you're having these questions, don't bother yourself with those. You can find any number of excuses, any number of explanations. The mind will never be capable of comprehending that, right? There are things that the mind will never be capable of comprehending, like for example life. Now the point is, the artist becomes more knowledgeable of things beyond the mind. For example, their emotions, right? They become more in tune with emotions, and emotions are the first steps in the ladder that will lead you towards becoming one with creation, right? Further than this comes another level, right? Another stage, which is called the alchemist, right? Of course, these namings may differ, but the alchemist is the one who reaches a certain level of peace, right? They are the ones who can go with grace through most of the life's challenges and situations, right? And we have a lot of such cases, especially in Hindu culture, right? And in many other cultures of the world, right? People who have taken all their challenges in life with at least a certain amount of grace, right? More or less, because of course, being in a physical body also has its own limitations. So you're also slightly bound by, the limitations of the body, right? The impulses of the flesh. Now, the fourth level is that of the wizard. The wizard is the one who has transcended these limitations, right? And we have certain great examples, right? Like Gautama the Buddha or Shiva or other such cases, right? Where such people not only lived their life with grace, but also transcended the mental, right? They also transcended physicality and the impulses of the body, right? So ultimately, the point is, the more you expand, right, you become more knowledgeable of things. The more you go beyond the level of the artist, you'll realize that religion is simply useless. It is no longer of any importance because religion is only important to the mind, right? The mind wants survival, and well, when you are running away from traumas, which we all have in our life, the mind is the best tool because the mind will always be like a black hole. It will always want to engulf as much as possible because ultimately what it wants is distraction. It wants to get more and more, right? Why is it that your mind is always keeping you distracted, right? It's always something new that pops in, right? It's always a new idea. It always throws you something different, right? It's like that dog. You don't want to play with them. You throw the stick, but it always brings it back, right? And it wants you to throw it again, right? And you always catch your mind coming up with all sorts of other ideas. That's why, well, many people suffer, right? They can't feel this idea of peace because they are identifying themselves with too many things. When you identify yourself with something, you are already creating separation because you're gonna view the others as enemies, right? And this has been also the case of religions, right? Christians have been at war with Muslims, right? Well, it's been a full-fledged war, right? Because, well, it was, right? The Ottoman Empire was interested in, conquering the western part of Europe, right? While Europe was interested in preserving its own Christianity, right? So both sides were nothing else than slaves of a single concept, right? A concept of that, well, depicts something beyond you. Now, that is an animalic point of view because let's take it simply now. An animal, right, is just a being who lives in survival mode, right? It just exists for its own survival. What it does is, well, it takes care of the survival of the body, right? If such an animal would become a bit more conscious of life, they will understand that there definitely is something beyond them that allowed this all, right, to exist. Most likely, at first, they will imagine that, well, a bigger version of themselves is somewhere out there, right? So a cow will probably imagine that there's a bigger cow, right? A squirrel will believe that there is a bigger squirrel, right? So imagine how good it is that, awareness, right, or whatever you want to call it, right, consciousness, the source, whatever you want to call it, God didn't give awareness to all animals, right? Imagine how many wars there would have been. There are already wars in between animals, right, for resources, survival, and whatever, but, it's not for a stupid, silly belief like, squirrels believing that no, there's a bigger squirrel, and they're fighting other animals because the other animals are believing that there's a bigger version of themselves, which is the creator, right? But well, there is only one animal that is doing this, right? It is the human, right? We are fighting one another. That there is one man out there in the sky that has this power, and what they are doing is they have created the whole world, and everything that comes afterward is just justification, right? It's just how some people have justified their means of controlling others. Because you can't create a religion that promotes fear without at least a hidden agenda of ruling people. Because if you wouldn't be interested in ruling people, right, like a tyrant, you would simply be willing to either be neutral, right, like many wise people have been, or simply do things to help elevate others, right? Just like many philosophers have done, especially in Europe and well, all over the world, but especially in Europe because Christianity has killed a lot of things. And well, it is still the greatest plague of the world. Much like any other single deity religion or well any other religious belief, because what a religion means is you're bypassing yourself, right? What Christianity says is you need someone to access the divinity, but you are piece of the divine, you are being of this world, right? You are one piece of this world, so honestly and obviously you are part of divine, right? You are part of the divine plan, you are part of the divine, you don't need someone to connect you to the divine, you're already connected to the divine even if you're running away from that, right? Many people claim themselves to be atheists, but what an atheist means, it means you don't have any belief, right? Any religious or godly belief, right? But the point is, well, ultimately there is something like a deity, right? Of course, there may be more, there may be just one, or the universe itself may be God, because, well, the universe may be as well capable of, destroying itself and rebirthing itself. Obviously, we're not gonna live as much to see, but you never know if or when it may happen, right? Just because our minds wouldn't want to embrace such a colossal idea, because the idea of a religion is much more accessible, much easier to embrace, and much more comfortable, obviously. Now, of course, well, it doesn't mean that reality will be the way the mind wants it. Now, why people embrace Christianity, right, or embrace the idea of a God, is because they run away from responsibility, right? Religion will always exist in unconsciousness. When people are aware of things, they are aware of the sensibilities of life, and they will no longer need any God or the such to tell them how to live and be, right? People believe in a God because they expect that God to give them something, right? Why do we have in English, right, and in any Christian language, you have words or expressions like God give me, or God may you give me whatever, or God give us, right, or God take us, right? It's just an explanation, it's just a manifestation of victimization, right? Whatever you are doing, right, you're only just a useless thing, right? You're only a victim of circumstance, right? And of course this is a way of running away from responsibility, because once people identify themselves with this fact, right, it's always God's fault, right? They are just powerless, right? They are just these puppets, they are just these innocent beings who are powerless in the face of this ruthless God, right? And ultimately we should worship this God because they are the God of love, but they will punish you severely in the judgment. So how is this God ultimately? Because Christians themselves seem so dumb, they can't figure out how their own God is, right? Like, are they a God of love? Why the fuck do you have to fear a God of love, ultimately, right? And then that God of love will punish you so severely after judgment that you will spend the eternity of your, well, afterlife, or the remaining of your afterlife, which sounds kind of oxymoronic, because, well, or, well, as an antithesis, because, well, if it's an eternity, there is no such thing as the remaining of it, right? Something that remains is only something limited, right? Only something limited is what remains, right? The rest of your life is what remains of your life, right? The rest of your money remains after, well, you spend a certain amount, right? But everything else is just that, right? So all this being said, the point is, religion will always be a point of unconsciousness, right? If something goes bad, well, demons have been influencing you. If you did something bad, obviously demons influenced you, right? But the Bible itself also says don't blame demons, right? They will be tempting you, they will be doing certain things to you, but, well, you are the one accepting, right? But no, it's demons, right? Now people have a more modern approach, which is called the ego, right? Everything that happens bad in your life, it's because of your ego, right? It's not because you're a dumb person who refuses to understand what this illusion of the ego is, right? It is just a pathetic excuse used to run away from responsibility, right? Something doesn't go the way you want, well, it's always God's fault, right? Which is also a very hideous way, because once something good happens, very few people say, well, thank you God, or, well, thank you universe, or whatever thing you believe in, right? But when something goes wrong, oh my God, they so blame a lot this Christianity, right? This whatever. Like, I'm not gonna dive into other religions because I don't know things or too many things about those, but in Christianity you always blame God for your misfortunes, right? So a religion is just that. It is just a belief, right? And with any belief, with any meaning, you have a choice. You either use it as a tool to become wiser, or you use it as a tool to become more hurt. That is, well, the only choice. If you choose to become hurt, well, pain only exists as a means, right? It only exists as a guidance out of unconsciousness, right? But unfortunately, many people idealize themselves with pain. They find pain as the new comfortable, which goes to show how sick so many of the people are. Then they will obviously feel justified to provoke at least as much pain to others, right? All this being said, hopefully this video is, well, introspective enough. Hopefully, well, hopefully you liked it. You are appreciated. Take care of yourselves. Feel free to share your own points of view on this video in the comment section below. You are loved and appreciated. Take care of yourselves. Stay awesome. Ferengian Board signing out.